News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis. Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
Welcome to Tool Talk Radio. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning.
I'm Alan Gilbreth, darkhookmedia.com.
And I'm Maximilian. And while I'd like to wish a very happy birthday to George Washington today, I'd also like to say that in lieu of a usual holiday, I have the mother of all follow-up stories based on an episode of last week.
Oh, well, how much? Okay, so that's relevant and intriguing. So is that just a tease, Max? You're going to inform us later? Okay. Well, happy birthday to good old George Washington. As a matter of fact, Max, in that theme, I have a feeling themes are going to emerge today. We're going to discuss, in our Great Moments in Building History, a structure that we know Washington hung out there.
Well, it was less of a give me as opposed to like doing Mount Vernon, but this one is just as fascinating.
I think this one's very interesting. This is a fully functioning bar and restaurant that is still in operation today called Fraunces. Did I pronounce it right? Fraunces Tavern, built in 1719 in New York City. And that baby, standing room only in that place. I mean, they are fully operational. They have a nice museum, but we're not going to unpack it yet. But stand by.
We are going to talk about how that bad boy is still standing
and how relevant that structure was to the founding of our country. Believe it or not, it's funny how things get done on a golf course or in a bar. But there's some adjunct stories to go with that. There
Absolutely.
You go. So if you want to, also I would say, go to Facebook and go to @Tool Talk Radio, and you can see pictures of Fraunces Tavern. You can also get a heads up on some of the other stories we're going to be discussing today. Let's see. This is going to be good. In Historically Terrible, we haven't pulled that one out for a while, Alan. The poisonous color green.
I got lots of stories about that.
Yeah, talk about a historically terrible idea. We also have some really funny street level science, and I want to roundtable that with you in terms of how to preserve dairy products. Let's just say that in unconventional ways. Trust me, folks, you're going to want to hear that. Alan's Week in Review sounds fairly optimistic. I didn't see anything involving sewage or unpleasant clogs. Am I right?
It's going to be more about legacy thinking.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. And there's more, and we're not teasing it. We got a whole checklist here, folks. Never fear. But before we get to any of those things, our must-have item of the week, of course, this is coming to you from our new sponsor, Groundworks, who is all about the protection of the foundation of your home, including your crawl space, basements, anything, that's where it all starts. And if you don't take care of it, that's where all the problems grow. So thanks to our buddies at Groundworks. But so Alan, tell people what I'm holding up if you can remember the name, because it's a pretty long one. So
well, you have got one of those wonderful as I'm going to call it, a round the corner hinge.
Yeah, this is called let me pull it up, a swing clear offset door hinge. So, folks, if you can imagine that. Now, this is definitely a niche product, but when you need it, you need it. I actually use it quite a bit because one of the things that I do is you've heard of like pull out shelving and pull out gliding out, or things that need to pull out. Well, in a pantry, there are pantries that have drawers and they have things that have to pull out. Well, if you can imagine a situation where your door is like a pantry door, perfect example. If it opens, but that edge of the door is interfering with the other side of the it's interfering with what needs to come out. Well, these hinges, they're pretty substantial. They do this kind of L shape, and what that does is it swings the door clear. So when you open it, instead of the door being in front of the door frame, it's actually to the left or the right of the door frame.
And that makes a huge difference, especially in a compact area.
Yeah, exactly, because how often have we seen a situation where a pantry, or really, I say pantry, but it could be any closet, where to get out what you need to get out, it has to open all the way. In fact, sometimes people might have tubs, or they might have that. Maybe that's where they keep the giant dog food container, and if it doesn't swing all the way open, you're not getting that baby out.
That is exactly where I was going to go with that, because those hinges right there, let you take a closet and turn it into an actual true to size storage area.
Right.
Because now you can shelve it so that you can and my big storage trick is concrete tubs.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yep,
the big concrete tub that if it will just perfectly slide in if the door is out of the way.
Right. Yeah, and you never know.
Perfect
There's situations where I see this too. I don't know that they make these in cabinet door hinges, but how many times have we seen cabinets that weren't laid out properly, and when you open that one corner drawer, it only comes out about 12 inches because it hits the stove or it hits the dishwasher handle or something like that. So it's a pretty cool product. So if you ever are in need of trying to get your cabinet or your hallway doors or your closet doors all the way swinging open, remember the swing clear offset door hinge. That rolls off the tongue. But anyway, it's pretty handy, and they're fairly reasonably priced. I think you can get a set of them for about $30.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, Max, I know you're rubbing your hands together, so this better be worth the build up here. So.
All right. Well, imagine you're in Whitechapel, England, the home of Jack the Ripper, and you see see the
as we often do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Max. Okay.
How is that a follow? Okay.
And you see the following manhole cover.
Oh, I know where he's going.
The Whitechapel Fatberg was defeated here in 2017.
Yes.
And so what? Here we go. This pretty boy has a pretty interesting statistics here. This Fatberg was 820 feet long, weighed over 130 tons, and was found under Whitechapel.
Oh my gosh!
Even working 7 days a week at the cost of £1 million per month. British pounds. The officials estimated it would take 2 months to destroy it.
I feel like, when was this? 2017.
2017.
Yes.
Alan, I feel like we reported on this back in the day, because this is one of those things that would have got your attention. But for people that didn't tune in last week, a quick explanation of what a Fatberg is, because Collierville's dealing with that right now.
A lot of places are outside of Boston, Coney Island, any of the ocean areas are dealing with Fatbergs. Okay, so here's what happens. And I'll give the same example I gave last week. So you boiled some hot dogs, and a little bit of oil came out of the hot dogs, and you took that water and you just tossed it down the sink.
Yep.
Well, it was 10 degrees. So that little tiny bit of oil is going to solidify somewhere in the pipes the minute that cold gets to it. Now, that's not that bad. But what happens is we also have a tendency to send things down like hair.
Oh, I
wipes,
see this. Yeah.
Paper towels that are not supposed to be flushed. And the bane of my existence for over 30 years was the industrial brown paper towel in commercial bathrooms.
Right.
People flush those, they take them down, they dry their hands, and instead of throwing them in the trash can, toss them in the toilet and flush them.
Wow.
And they eventually soak up that grease, and now with the cold, they become just basically concrete.
I'm just picturing like one of these 1950s monster movies, like The Blob or something. You have all this stuff coagulating and growing and evolving right under our feet in our city, and all of a sudden it comes to bear.
All right, let me tell you how scary it can get.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there at your municipality water service. You're just minding your own business in the wastewater, and suddenly all the pressures on one side of a connection drop, and the pressure begins building up exponentially on the other side of it.
I just hear da-dun.
Oh my gosh. And it becomes like a scene out of one of the nuclear reactors going to explode movies.
Yeah, this is
because suddenly
80s action movie all over the place. So.
And you whip open that opening, and what you are greeted with is diapers.
Yeah.
or some kind of cloth, and it is all impregnated with fat.
Yeah.
And it's cold and it's solid.
Just one more thing about the Fatberg in London. Not werewolves in London. But anyways, I think what the Brits have on their plate that's kind of interesting is the fact that not only did they destroy it, but they preserved it. Not the full extent of it, but there's 2 pieces of it that lie after drying in the British Museum. Or the Museum of London, rather.
Yeah, they're showing that. Please don't do this.
And it said, according to the curator over there, she said that the Fatberg became one of the museum's most popular exhibits.
I don't doubt it. I mean, come on. That's,
It's living history.
800 feet of bad.
That's just, and man, okay. All right. But I have some thoughts about this because you're just making me wonder, Max. There's always an upside to everything too. So I'm gonna ponder this during the break. But okay, and they call it a Fatberg over in England.
Yeah, they are universally called Fatberg.
What's horrifying is that they have a very rich history of Fatbergs over there. One was the size of a Boeing 747.
Okay, I got 1 or 2 thoughts about that, and then we'll move on, I promise. You're listening to Tool Talk Radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
Oh, I'm afraid the deflector shield will be quite operational when your friends arrive.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Alan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, Max followed up. I guess we just can't get away from the topic of Fatbergs. Well, last week, the story broke that Collierville is contending with a Fatberg situation of their own. And in Great Britain, they've memorialized their defeat of the Fatberg of 2017.
Correct.
Okay. So, and you said this one was what? I don't want to get the stats wrong. It was like 80 tons or something?
No, it was about 820 feet long, and it was about 130 tons.
I mean, okay, so how many once again, isn't a car 2 tons, something like that? Okay.
Sure.
Whatever. It's a lot.
London had a terrible history, though, of Fatbergs, as I alluded to before we went to break.
Right. And so not to just keep rehashing it, but the problem with this is people are flushing things down the drain and washing things down the drain that don't need to be, especially things like diapers or paper towels or even these wipes that supposedly are flushable. They're never flushable.
Well, and we all have the new super duper paper towels that have like a webbing in them,
right?
So they're indestructible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Don't flush those.
And like the blue towels, those will not break down, which is great when you're caulking. You need to reuse them and rinse them off and stuff, but it's not great when you flush them.
Yeah, so, do not do that.
And the fat and the oils that go down the drain form sort of a glue for these, and then they don't break up. Well, here's my question, Alan, because I always try to be optimistic. Is there a use? Like, I guess I'm thinking of our story from a couple weeks ago about the beavers over, how they form things and how we just let nature do its thing and they help the ecosystem. Well, is there a practical use for Fatbergs? Like, I guess I'm wondering, are there microbes or are there little fish that would actually love to eat this stuff? Would they? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's a delicacy for certain.
We need to bring creatures. The goats down there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Or could it form a dam? Like we have a Fatberg providing.
Can we be friends with the Fatbergs?
Yeah. In other words, how do we harness the power of the Fatberg to our advantage? So it's not just we're not just breaking it up and throwing it out.
Well, all right. The biggest thing is let's properly dispose of things that need to be properly disposed of.
Yeah.
And we won't have the Fatberg problem. However, there are, if you go to your local big box store, there are a variety of new products that are enzyme-based, not harsh chemical-based, that help get little enzymes and probiotics down your drain to help eat some of the oils and things that build up. Okay. And so it keeps it moving on down through the system. That is the best way to do it, is to keep basically the drains clean and to flush the things that need to be flushed and don't flush the things that don't need to be flushed.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll follow this story with great interest. And I hope Collierville's tackled the issue. I haven't followed up, but
actually they're doing pretty good. They got it cleared out of the main pumps, and so they're moving water along just fine.
Okay. Well, let's shift gears. I think we have another story that's kind of on theme with this.
Hail
level science!
Now, you talk about street level science. This, and it's funny, once again, the algorithms know me like the back of their hand because I was not seeking this story out, Alan. As a matter of fact, this story,
you.
I think what I was doing is I was closing, during the show, folks, just a little behind the scenes, is we keep our Facebook page open in case any of you chime in and want to weigh in, and we'll read your comments on the air if they're interesting enough. But
Right.
I was closing up the Facebook page last week, and a story popped up that I wasn't sure if this was from The Onion or if this was a real story, but apparently back in the day before we had refrigeration, someone in Russia he was an inventor. I guess I should have looked his name up, but anyway, you probably have that. It was an accidental discovery. They found that these little brown frogs were swimming around in this jar of milk, and the milk should have expired. It was pretty much past its prime, but the enzymes that this frog was giving off kept the milk from spoiling, and so it became a custom to put brown frogs in your milk to preserve it.
Mm-hmm.
I see a few problems with this, but
No, not really. That's,
but on the upside, once again, we have natural enzymes using, as a natural food preservative, I guess you could say. But this story had to be unpacked, Alan. So,
well, all right. You're getting into you're getting into antique, into antique techniques, and some of my favorite statements about history wasn't necessarily tidy. It smelled bad, and we did strange things.
Amen, brother. Yeah.
So, we used to rub eggs with butter.
Mm-hmm.
We used to make buttered eggs because the butter would seal the little air holes on the egg and make the egg last longer.
Well,
and that was just part of
fairly logical when you think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, but making butter was a way of preserving the milk. Because milk actually is curds and wheys. Basically, you have soluble fats that will float. So we get expressions like the cream will rise to the top.
Yeah.
And in the case of these little brown frogs, I'm suddenly hearkening to the Disney movie The Princess and the Frog, where they keep explaining that it's not slime, it's mucus. And that is because they are very antibacterial.
See, I've always heard the opposite. Like when our kids were little, my wife would freak out if they picked up like a turtle or a frog because like there's germs and
well, there are, but not in the skin. Now, so you play, all right. Now, if you're playing with a reptile of any type, let's say like a pet turtle.
Right.
The problem was when you went to the pet store, there were 500 pet turtles in the pile, and somebody had pooped, and now everybody had walked in it, and you walked in and picked up the turtle and started playing with it and got salmonella all over your hands.
And we hope you're enjoying your breakfast right now.
So just, what did we do before refrigeration? Well, we dried things. We also had various ways of seasoning it. We smoked stuff. And milk was a product that if you separated the cream off of it, the milk would last longer. You still only had a few days unless you lived in a fairly cold climate.
Yeah.
But
well, in Russia, they could just
the antibacterial nature of the frog meant, bacteria did not begin growing as quickly as untreated milk, if you wish to put it that way.
So I got a question. So what is the frog getting out of this exchange? Because do they like to drink milk, or are they just... I guess I'm wondering what benefit the frog is getting, or like, or
not being smashed by the 5-year-old that caught him. There's there's a lot of animals we brought into the house because they had a purpose. So when it's a work animal, we have a tendency to treat them a little better.
Yeah, I would hope so. But
so, the house frog, the cricket on the hearth, the house frog in the milk, the cat, the dog. These things.
The house frog in the milk. That's going to be the new name for, I don't know, good country western song.
So, are these crazy stories true? Yeah, some of these crazy stories are true. We used to do some pretty strange things to keep our food edible.
I guess I just wonder how many discoveries come about that way, because now there's other frogs, or I guess they're called toads, where they have a hallucinogenic properties, where the hippies were licking toads and stuff.
That's the marine toad. Yeah.
So you wonder if, like, when you go to the
who figured that out?
Yeah, back in the day when you're going to the supermarket, you're going down the one aisle of the brown toads for your milk and the other toads for.
All right, well, this was a frog, not a toad. And you could have the old Roman story of how to kill somebody was to put a toad in their wine.
Oh, wow.
So that it would secrete poison. And there is one legendary story. I do not remember which Roman official it was, but apparently he had a heart condition.
Yeah. And
the poison of the toad they put in his wine acted like digitalis. So instead of killing him, they made him better.
Wow.
But they were trying to kill him by putting a toad in his wine.
So I see us heading towards a Flintstones future. The more I'm seeing this, I mean, the animals are going to be stepping up and playing a role for better or for worse.
I'm not going to argue with you.
Okay. Well, that was our brown frog story. It had to be aired. When we come back, we're going to find out what Allan did this week.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
You have no skills and you're a loser!
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And I think if you're sitting down to breakfast, it is now safe to eat. I don't think we're going to do anything to disrupt your appetite.
Are you sure?
I'm hoping, but I'm looking at my co-host. I'm looking to you, sir, and let's find out what you did this week, man.
Oh, the humanity.
So we ruined your eardrums, just not your appetite. So, all right, well, this is the time of the show where we like to find out what Allan did, because it's never the same thing twice, it seems.
No, I had two unusual things of note this week. Of actually installing closets. Actually, we're there.
What does that mean? Installing a closet?
Well,
because that could mean a lot of things.
Well, I mean, actually, here are the 2x4s. Let's go build a closet.
So you had an existing room, and you were making an enclosure.
Made a room. We made a room, and in this room, we decided. The first decision that changed everything about this room was we decided to go from an 8-foot ceiling to a 9-foot ceiling because all the sheetrock had to come out anyway. So we made it a 9-foot ceiling, and that gave us.
Okay, hold on a second. Hold on. You gloss over. How do you just decide to have a 9-foot ceiling? You're
rip
you
out
add
the
a foot?
ceiling. Yeah, you rip out the ceiling. You see where your rafters are and.
Why was the ceiling a foot lower than it should have been?
Well, it was a standard 8-foot ceiling. It was right where it should have been. However, that put a lot of space as unusable above it.
I'm confused about this.
We were pulling out all the sheetrock anyway as part of this renovation. So we pulled out all the sheetrock, pulled down all the old ceiling, and we looked at it and went, oh, we could actually move the ceiling in this room, in this entire house. We could actually move it up a foot.
Was this house built in the 70s?
Started in the 10s, got renovated in the 70s.
There you go. I was going to say, why? Okay, go ahead.
All right,
sorry.
Well,
that just stunned me. It's like you don't just raise the ceiling.
Well, somebody back in the 70s had subroofed it.
There you go.
So it wasn't what you would call like in an office where you've got a hanging ceiling.
Right.
But they had built underneath the rafters, they had built a subframe, and they had attached the sheetrock to that.
Okay.
Well, the sheetrock was well past being used, and they did a lot of, let's just say they closed the door and nobody noticed. So we had to tear out a lot of stuff, and we got that tore out. We're like, we might as well take that nonsense down and make this a 9-foot ceiling.
Sure.
So when we made it a 9-foot ceiling, that suddenly changed the whole aspect of what we were looking at for a closet. Because now we
You
have
got
an
an extra foot of storage over
space.
your head.
Exactly.
That's pretty significant in a closet.
Well, and what we looked at was, all right, we're gonna make a standard closet, a standard height. So it's gonna be a 7-foot tall closet on the inside, and we went ahead and enclosed the entire wall. The closet is now the entire wall. So we've got.
Oh, I see. So you had a whole run. How long is that? Like
got
10 feet or?
Yeah, because we're going to put the sliding doors. We've got the mounts to put in for the doors that crisscross in front of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got those. We're going to go 7 foot high in there. And this week, what we were doing was making sure that everything was level.
Yeah.
So the closet doors would move easily. And of course, what a lot of people don't realize is your home is not level.
No,
It's
or
not.
square.
It's not square. It's
very
not
hard to
level.
get it that way.
It is off by 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch, any direction you look. But if your sheetrock people are skilled and your mudding people are skilled, most of those differences disappear to the eye.
Right. Yeah. It's gradual, but yeah.
Yeah, but, when it's done properly. But the biggest thing about putting in these closets was, look at all this space we got above here.
Right.
So we're actually putting in doors that swing up. We went in and put in 3/4 inch plywood and made very substantial storage area above the closet.
Right.
So that's been a lot of fun. And now we're starting to frame. We're done with the sheetrocking. We're done with the mudding. We've got them painted. And now we're putting on the finish. We're doing the finishing work where we're lining the inside of it, making the 2x4s disappear. We'll be putting up the outside framing to go around it, putting up the decorations.
Right.
So that it looks good. And I am very excited about the doors that we're going to use a similar hinge.
Yeah.
And we're going to have little flip-up doors so you actually have long-term above-the-closet storage.
Which is great for those maybe once a year where you take down, okay, it's wintertime, it's time to take down
The
that extra
sweaters
layer of
and
blanket
stuff.
and your
Yeah, that
sweaters
kind of
and
stuff.
Stuff that you only use seasonally.
It still doesn't beat the guy who had the elevator or like the platform that ascended with the Christmas tree.
Well, Alan's getting there. I mean, who knows? But
actually, in this house, we have actually built a secret compartment.
there you go.
We actually have a spot in the house that is honestly going to be a secret compartment. So
I did that for this job. Yeah, people like that.
yeah, well, you're going to
Why
have
not?
a hidey spot where you can put family records. Maybe you own a firearm. You're going to have
Even a panic room, like if you need to get in there for safety.
not that big, but this will actually has a basement. But
Yeah.
So we're going to get the doors on that. And that project led to a discussion with a friend of mine that ended up with me having to come over because they were entertaining. And she
okay.
had like 20 people showing up. And as I walked in the hallway, and Joe, you and I have talked about lighting and legacy a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bring them up again because there was honestly a 1977 glass globe incandescent light bulb in the hallway. And it's kind of like, all right, that needs to come down. We need to get rid of that because the 70s called, they want their light fixture back. But there's so many better options today that are LED.
Oh, yeah.
Now you don't have to get
They
on the
don't get
footstool.
hot. They don't
and
look ugly.
They don't look ugly. They're updated. So, a quick trip to the lighting store and a new, well-lit lighting fixture took 30 minutes to take the old one down, put the new one up. Looked fabulous. The next thing we ended up doing was just looking at the hallway and going, when was the last time the kids were here?
Yeah.
Oh, no, the kids have got kids. And I went, all right, can we get rid of the kids stuff in the hallway?
What kid stuff? Now that's interesting.
Well, they had the furniture so that the shoes and the coats and the thingies and the children disaster area was a blast area in the hallway.
Yeah.
I was like, well, It's been 10 years since there's been a kid in this house. Let's take all of it out of the hallway. All of it. Take everything out, and let's look at it from a point of view of adult entertaining.
Yeah.
And now you could put in wall coat racks that looked good. And now you could hang 20 coats up in the hallway because you don't have 4 kids anymore with all their shoes and stuff piled up all up and down this. So it was kind of a hard moment for my friend because this is the way the hallway's always been.
Boy, we all get locked into that. I mean, even you and I, as much as we preach against this, it's easy to have that at your own house because there's that one area you just walk past every day and you don't think about it, and you get a fresh pair of eyes coming in, and they have a whole new perspective, and it's exciting when you make those changes. So.
Well, it's a little painful, but, it was kind of weird, because House Project A has led me to all kinds of different thinking about other projects that I've done over the year because, okay, we could. Why did we raise the roof a foot? We could. And now the footprint of the house looks so much bigger.
That's a big, a foot.
I mean,
that's a big difference.
These rooms in this house look absolutely monstrous. And, it's the same floor. It's the same footprint. And now that we pulled all the junk out of my friend's hallway, oh my God, the hallway's huge.
Sure.
It looks like a bus station getting ready to load up the passengers. Because, well, those pieces of furniture have been sitting against that wall for the last 15 years.
Right.
And it's just the way the hallway looks.
Yeah.
And
I don't know. And it opens up new possibilities because it's a chain reaction. The hallway connects to the living room, and the living room connects to... And
the stairwell needs to be painted next, and then this needs to... As you said, the dominoes immediately began being discussed. Going, well, if we're going to move all that and get rid of that stuff, hey, look at this next room. Look at the amount of room we could make in here.
So this was actually a very positive week of destroying and blowing up the legacy thinking and opening up new options.
It was a little bit, like I said, it was like kind of pulling a splinter. It was a little bit painful to get it out, but the minute it was gone, everybody felt so much better.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, that umbrella stand's been there for 15 years. And I was like, yeah, it was the last time you put an umbrella in it. 14 years ago. All right, let's get it out of here. Let's get this out of the way.
Yeah,
and
doing new
moving
stuff
on
is cool.
It just the hallway totally changed the aspect of walking in the house.
Well, this conversation triggered me, Alan. Believe it or not, I've held my tongue, and I in a good way. And I'm going to share my thoughts when we come back here on Tool Talk Radio.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Alan.
Do you know what happens to a butter-based frosting after 6 decades in a poorly ventilated English basement?
I guess I hadn't...
Well, I have a feeling what you are about to go through is punishment enough.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Very on point, Max. And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio.
Is that what they do with the frogs?
Who knows what preservatives. Anyway, I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Alan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And if you're wondering, oh, wait, Alan, I don't think I did post a picture of that. I'll need to do that at the next break because earlier in the show we were talking about frogs used to preserve dairy products back in Russia before they discovered refrigeration and everything. But we're not rehashing that story. That's another reason to tune into our podcast versions after the shows are posted. Well, Alan, your conversation about your home laying out new closets and things like that really triggered me. So we're gonna, in a good way, sparked an idea, and we're gonna get to that in a minute. Before we do that, though, we want to talk about our new friends over at Groundworks, which their specialty is all about basically the foundation of your home, including basements, including crawl spaces, and including slabs. I guess we just call them slabs. But it's interesting, the manifestation of that. Well, for one of the things that's interesting about, I'm thinking if you own a business specializing in foundation repair, is you almost become like a Sherlock Holmes somebody may go, I have these ants crawling up the wall.
Oh, my gosh.
And I have these doors that have cracks above them and everything, and I don't know what they are. And maybe they call a carpenter first, and then the carpenter is, if they know their stuff, is going to say, no, you need to call Groundworks, because it all relates to your foundation. You have that musty smell that won't go away. You have that those unusual sounds when you walk across the floor in that one room. Well, because your foundation isn't sound. And so that's why you need to call Groundworks. One of the great things is they come out, they do a free inspection, and they can analyze. And there's a lot of dynamics that go into play with keeping a healthy foundation. And also, sometimes people hear they hear foundation damage and they think this is going to be a hugely horrifying prospect, and maybe they're intimidated and they don't want to call. Well, sometimes it's a simple fix, but you have to address your foundation, folks. Just grow up. You're a homeowner. Suck it up and call. They're very helpful. They're good. They're going to take care of you. Go to groundworks.com. You can book your free inspection, and they're going to let you know what the issues are. But if you have any types of unusual musty smells or sticking windows, too, that's another one. Unwanted pests, sagging floors, drainage issues, all of that, especially if you live on a hill. Think about that. If you have water rushing against your house whenever it rains, it's something to think about, and maybe not a good gutter system either. So get in touch with our friends at groundworks.com and book your free appointment today. All right, Allan, well, here's the deal. You were talking about renovating. Now, is this a friend or just a client that called you? You were talking about, basically, you took a home that was pretty old back in the 70s. For whatever reason, they turned a 9-foot ceiling into an 8-foot ceiling. I don't know why they thought that was better, but maybe they had to run some ductwork through there. I don't know. I just keep wondering why you would do that, but it didn't look like it, right? They just arbitrarily lopped a foot off that ceiling.
Well, I mean, this property was of, originally a little house in the woods with a basement, and then somebody came along and built a living room on it. And then somebody came along and added another room to it.
Okay.
And then, so I mean, it was kind of a piecemeal. And when they eventually, in the late 70s, put a roof over the entire thing, they basically put a roof over the whole structure. So for most of it, it was a 9-foot roof.
Okay.
It was 9 feet from the inside to there. And to kind of keep it matching, they had sub-roofed it and put in an 8-foot ceiling to make it match the rest of the structures.
Yeah.
But since we were doing a total refit and we started tearing everything out and finding the old raccoon nest and all the mess.
Right.
Since we're tearing all that out anyway, we looked at it and we went, we could honestly take this up to 9 foot and really open this building up.
Well,
it looked good at 8, but I got to tell you, at 9, it's just stunning.
Well, the thing that got me thinking was, okay, you saw an opportunity, and it meant a little more work, I'm guessing, to do this, but you also looked at the options through. In other words, you looked at this project holistically. Mm-hmm. Okay, so with that in mind, I don't know I'm sure you've seen this movie. I don't know, folks, if you've seen this, but there was a movie called The Founder. It came out, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, all about the founding of McDonald's, the first McDonald's in the 1950s.
Oh, yes. Oh,
and
I know
they
that
show
story
the
very
McDonald's
well.
brothers, and these guys, what set them apart is those early ones. I mean, for one thing, they were serving actually pretty quality food, but they had the Speedy system, and they set up the kitchen to be as ultimately efficient as possible. And they had it down to they had everything very choreographed. And what they did, if you watch the movie, they showed kind of an overhead shot. They took they went out to a parking lot and they took chalk and they marked out exactly where everything was going. And they made it visual so you could see. And so they said, okay, get over here. And they basically did test runs, and they designed their kitchen exactly to their specifications like that for maximum feng shui, you could say. Well, when I see design flaws, a lot of times it comes down to the misplacement of a closet, or there's too many windows, or there's too many whatever, where, okay, it looks great in an empty room, but the minute you got to furnish this room, it's like, where am I going to put the bed? Where am I going to do this without blocking entrance to the closet? Where's the traffic flow going here? So sometimes I think it's easy for somebody to throw together a quick idea of, okay, this is what this new room addition is going to look like. But I really think you got to spend the time doing something similar, like what you were doing, where maybe you take tape and you mark it off and you go, okay, once we put the closet here, well, that eliminates where we can put the reading chair over here, or the desk, or the something. And I just feel like you have to have a real holistic attitude with designing structures like that.
Oh, you should have been there for the fight over where to put the air conditioning ducts.
There you go. I mean, it all plays a role in how enjoyable the home's going to be, and now's the time to do it. You do it
exactly,
when it's
exactly. We
you've
were like,
built
okay,
anything.
this back bedroom is going to have this beautiful view of the backwoods. So the bed is 90% chance going to go right here. So let's not put the air vent under the bed.
Exactly.
Let's not put and so there have been numerous discussions in this house over don't do that.
Yeah.
But simply because, all right, well, and honestly, one of the big things was, where's the TV going to go?
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, how big is the TV going to be? Well, today you can go to your local department store and
things weigh 5 pounds and you can hang it on the wall.
Oh my
like
gosh, they're like what, 70 inches, 80 inches.
Right.
I saw a 90-inch TV back at Christmas for not a lot of money.
Right.
And I'm sorry, most houses back in the 70s were designed to have the fireplace be the centerpiece, and that's not true anymore.
Right.
Because now you can have a 70-inch television, and that's what people want to stare at, not
but it's
not
a
the pile of bricks in the corner.
Yeah, it's a holistic approach, and I think, and I try to do that when I'm designing, in terms of where cabinets go, where everything goes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to salute you, man, for doing that, because I think that's hugely important, taking a holistic approach in your home design. Well, hour 1 of Tool Talk Radio is in the can, but stand by, folks. We've got some good stuff coming up in the second hour.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis. Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio. Sorry, I think I was a little hot on that, Max. And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Alan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And I would encourage you to go to our Facebook page, go to @ToolTalkRadio on Facebook. I've updated the post because I somehow forgot to post the story about the frogs floating around in the milk. But we're fully posted now. We're fully updated. And so if you missed the first hour of the show, it's too complex to recap, but it's pretty good. Alan, what should people do if they want to hear past episodes of Tool Talk?
That's easy. All they got to do is pop over to Spotify or YouTube. We have channels at both. They can look up Dark Oak Media, or they can look up ToolTalkRadio.com, and they can follow along with, honestly, at this point, Joe, absolutely years and years of content.
Getting on close. Well, yeah, we're not at the decade stage. But
Yeah, we're trying. We're getting there.
Also, we want to remind you that we're welcoming in a new sponsor, Groundworks, which is a great company that's local and national that is all about the protection of the foundation of your home. A healthy foundation. Well, you don't have a home without it. So let's just face it. You don't have a nice home without it. You don't have a home you can resell either. So deal with it today.
Crawl spaces and all that stuff is
Basements.
very important.
All that good stuff. So, all right. Well, so this is going to be tricky to play on the radio here, but I'm just going to, here's the thing. If you go to our Tool Talk Radio Facebook page, you will see a post that I made. So, Alan, I'm watching, do you ever watch the Rick Steves videos? He's the guy that has like the best job in the world. He basically gets paid to travel around countries, and he makes like these hour-long videos and it's basically a travel log. He does a really good job. They're really nice, and he goes everywhere.
Okay.
Like Rick
sounds
Steves
nice.
went to Iceland. Rick Steves in whatever. Well, he went to Slovakia, and it's funny because they're talking about this famous architect out in Slovakia, and they're walking around, and I saw something, and I had to freeze it, and I took I posted the picture on our Facebook page. It's the most random thing you're ever going to think of, but there was an architect that lived in Slovakia from the mid 1800s. I think he died in 1950, named Plaknik, and with a really tricky name to spell. But anyway, Max, he was one of these guys like Nikola Tesla. These people that they're basically literally married to their work. They
or
never
Antoni Gaudi. He was another famous architect who literally shaped the design of Barcelona. So he just shaped the design of, what was it? It's something with an L. The city that Plachnik was from.
Yeah, we really need to do our research, but I can't pronounce that city anyway. There's like all vowels and maybe one, anyway. But the point was, this is one of these guys that literally his desk, he had a bed and a desk, and he lived a very austere life, but he was all about his work. But so Allan, I'm looking at this video, and this room, for such a modest room, had the coolest door lintels. I think I'm saying that correct. Because this did not look like a normal door frame. So, folks, if you can imagine this, or if you want to just go to our Facebook page and look at it, imagine something very substantial. It really reminded me of either Japanese architecture. It reminded me, actually, of like ancient. It reminded me of something I saw in the Ten Commandments film, where basically the support above your door was a giant beam. It was like probably a 6x6 beam that goes across, and then you have two posts going up, kind of like Stonehenge. Well, basically as far as I could tell, the visual aesthetic he was going for was taking the support structure, which would normally be hidden, and instead of hiding it, showcasing it. It's now seen. It is now a focal point of the room. And I got to tell you, man, it looks cool. And it got me thinking about design. I'm like, how many other missed opportunities do we have in our home where maybe, who says you can't accent this point? And I was thinking, because I know in steampunk, we're hopscotching around a little bit about that, but you know about steampunk, and it seems to me one of the design aesthetics is you're taking something that's either mechanical or structural, and instead of hiding it, you're putting a spotlight on it, and it actually looks really cool.
Well, there are a number of repurposed buildings these days, and I'm going to pick on one in New Orleans that was a sugar mill.
A sugar mill. Now, I don't even know what that would look like. So.
And it's big steel beams and a lot of giant mechanical areas so that you could press sugar cane, make sugar.
Yeah.
So, these are big mechanical. It's very, very, when we say steampunk, this is kind of what you're picturing.
Right.
Big wheels and metal pieces and that kind of stuff. And, of course, the sugar factory hasn't been in there in 80 years. But about 40 years ago, a hotel chain bought the property, and instead of tearing down the old sugar mill, they restored it.
There you go.
And that is now their front lobby.
Why not?
As you walk in, here are these giant gears and wood beams. And this thing is just, from a design point of view, you can almost see the building flex. This building is just grrr.
Yeah.
It is big, it's powerful, and it is definitely the aesthetic of a sugar mill. You expect, as you're walking around this, you're getting that nostalgia.
Right.
This was.
Well, I got to ask, what does a sugar mill look like? Because I can't picture is there a big boiler? Is there a big something in the middle?
There's a couple of huge storage tanks where the sugar would have gone. And the big centerpiece was, of course, the crushing wheel in the center, which was, it was a big steam-driven, and you put sugar cane in one end, and it crushed it into nothing. And the juice came out one side, and the waste material came out the other. So, I mean, there's this just big, huge, really almost intimidating piece of equipment right in the dead center of this thing.
Yeah.
And, so the aesthetic, it gets its point across. It's, hey, this was a historical building and we're here. And when you think about like a lintel in a wall, there is a secret that builders never told you of. Let's pick on old buildings that have big, giant, windows.
Yeah.
Stone buildings that are 20 feet tall. Well, they have the big, giant windows in them because the window supports the weight without adding more weight for more bricks and that kind of stuff. It broke up the weight so we could have the taller building.
Like cathedrals and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a lintel came in here and it was big and hard and beefy because, as you and I have said 1,000 times, buildings move.
Yeah.
And as the building
That's why in an
settles,
earthquake, you go under your door frame.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because your door frame, even though you don't see it, has a lintel.
Mm-hmm.
It is the door for it to swing freely, or your windows to open and close properly, are not part of the structure of the wall. They're their own box.
Right.
AKA, they have a lintel. So that keeps the windows sliding up and down no matter how your house is reacting to the weather.
Yeah. And I mean, I know when you go to a lot of downtown places, and of course they converted the brewery, and the crosstown is the perfect example. Is they had brick walls and they had different columns that were pretty distressed, and instead of just hiding it, they showcase it. And man, is that a cool looking structure.
It gets the point across, and especially here in Memphis and Crosstown, of that was a Sears distribution building for decades. That was one of the early ones, and it was over 1 million square feet, and it was basically built like a concrete tooth.
Yeah.
It would have been almost impossible to tear it completely down and replace it. And I will freely admit I was not a fan of the project until I saw what they did.
Yeah, I was a vocal critic until I had to eat my hat.
When I walked in and I saw what they had accomplished, and you do get to see the structure of the building.
Yeah.
You get to see the concrete lintels around the doors. You do get to see the support structures. And a lot of that is really good looking, and a lot of it is really architectural. And for somebody looking for that special looking building,
right,
these are great ideas.
Yeah. And I think there's things even in our home we could do. I had an idea that I'll pitch when we come back after the break, but it occurred to me what an interesting I don't know. I feel like we should use all options on the table, with design. There's so many things, and I will say it's nice because it seems today there's a little bit more of an openness to do that. You go to a lot of these downtown businesses and where they've repurposed like a brownstone, and they don't try to hide it. They showcase it. They show you the rafters. They show you the air ducts and everything, and it's a cool look. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that in the home. So I have one idea. I don't know if it's all that exciting, but I'm gonna share it when we come back. And then I can't wait. In our great moments in building history, we're gonna talk about a historic tavern in New York, over 300 years old, that was almost the birthplace of the revolution, you could say.
Got close.
You're listening to Tool Talk Radio. We're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Alan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And Alan, we got a listener question over on Facebook, and from Jeanette. I'm not sure I can do this during the show, Jeanette. I will try, but we're kind of busy at the moment. But she was commenting on our swing clear. Let me see. The swing clear offset door hinge. Mm-hmm. That was our must-have item of the week. And she said, because I put a picture on our Facebook page. If you're trying to imagine what it looks like, folks, it's a L-shaped hinge that when it opens, it's pretty impressive. But it allows a door to swing clear and not interfere with things you're pulling out. And she said, "Can you post a picture of this in operation?" So We'll see. Maybe after the show, Jeanette. But thanks for thanks for chiming in on that. Because
I'm sure we can.
I'll have to track that down. But before the break, before we get to our great moments in building history, I just want to say something. So we were talking about showcasing a design aesthetic, possibly, that I was really intrigued with, where you basically take things that are more or less functional or structural, and instead of hiding them, you showcase them, and it becomes a design feature. I was talking about these lentils that I saw in this really cool home in Slovakia. But anyway, I was thinking of one. What do you think of this, Alan? And I hope I'm not giving out a bad idea on the air. But I was just thinking, okay, on interior walls in our home, there's no insulation, because what's the point? Typically
there can be.
There can be, but unless maybe for sound or something. But 9 times out of 10, a wall, like if you have a wall between your living room and your dining room connecting, usually those walls are hollow.
Right.
Well, okay. What if you took, and we know that there's studs and they should be every 16 inches.
Right.
Okay, what if you cut an opening? Let's just suppose you cut an opening 32 inches wide and it's maybe 3 or 4 feet tall. Okay, so now you have a stud in the middle. You've now cut an opening between studs, and so now you have that stud. Well, it occurred to me, if you trimmed it out really nicely, you now visually connected the rooms. What if you paint the stud black and maybe you put a cool... you trim it out on the edge. You could put some horizontal shelves and put some little knickknacks in there. Or you could put something, I don't know, you could visually connect the rooms. You're not digging the idea.
Far ahead of you. I'm so far ahead of you.
Or maybe you do it more, and maybe instead of just removing the studs, you're accenting the stud, almost like you're showing the skeleton of your home in an aesthetic way. I don't know.
Welcome
it's off the wall, but why not?
Welcome to the 60s, Joe.
Please. Yeah.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
We would build of non-sheetrocked walls that were exactly that. They were just decorative dividers, and you could build an entire shelving unit and all kinds of designs you wanted in the studs.
Right.
So long as you maintained, being able to hold the wall up.
Yeah.
But that was not unusual, and it's been a while since I've installed one of those. I've taken a few out recently, but I've installed a couple of those, and they're a lot of fun because you can really, get artistic with something like that. So, no, it is not out of the question, and done well. Very, very functional.
Well, I just feel like it would be cool. One of the things, I had a customer years ago where they had a dining room and then they had a living room and there was just a wall between it. And all I did is I put in French doors to connect it, and they were glass French doors and everything. Right. And they basically stayed open most of the time. And the house felt like I just doubled the size of the house. And suddenly this room, because we didn't have to pull the entire wall down to connect the room, but these rooms felt definitely connected. And it made just allowing a connection between the two rooms changed the entire vibe of the house. And so I'm thinking, well, maybe on a smaller scale, you could do that with something kind of interesting like this. And if you don't like it, cover it up with sheetrock again. So it's like,
I'll tell you the goofiest version of that I ever saw. I didn't actually install it, but it was one of those visiting a home. They had a dining room, a classic dining room, living room setup. It was a 50s style, ranch style house.
Yeah.
And of course, the dining room fundamentally is useless. Nobody eats in there.
Not very much anymore, I'm ashamed to say.
Not in the modern world.
Yeah.
Maybe when Eisenhower was in office, but, these days, nah.
I'm not proud of that fact. I think families should eat together, but
I think
a lot
they
of times
should,
they
but
don't.
I don't think you need a stuffy little room to eat in.
Okay.
And what they had done was cut a hole in the wall and put a pass-through and put like a counter.
Mm-hmm.
So that you came out of the kitchen and you just put the snacks and stuff for TV night, put your popcorn on the counter between the rooms. Ta-da!
No, that's not bad either.
I thought that was a very cool idea.
Yeah. Okay. Well, folks, that's going to be out on the table because I think this is an interesting design concept that we can explore. But it's time to move on, you guys.
And now, great moments in building history.
Now, Max, you're the historian. You're the one that suggested this idea, so I feel like we should let you tee it off.
Well, I'll tee it off. I'll kind of begin with a little bit of the pre-Revolutionary War history to bait the hook.
Okay.
Essentially, the reason I chose this is I like the idea of it's less about the structure itself, and it was more about the ideas from out of which this place came, and the history wrapped around the building itself. So let's go back to it. You were sort of right. It actually, the original property existed all the way back to 1671.
Because I have 1719.
It was 1719 that the building itself was created, but the property itself extends back those many years.
Now, Max, for people just tuning in, they're saying, okay, what building are you talking about?
I'm talking about Fraunces Tavern, which is the oldest tavern in New York. It's not the oldest tavern in America, but it definitely has its historical significance all the same.
Okay.
So 1671 was the home of the mayor at the time, and he gifted the property to his son-in-law by the name of Stephen Delancey. And Delancey built the current building in 1719. And this family had like prominent leadership in New York. And so the building itself is kind of built in a sort of Georgian style, which is like those famous roofs where they kind of like pitch to like a triangle or whatever. Like you've seen a lot of Georgian buildings around like maybe like the East Coast, and it's named after King George III. But anyways.
Very classic look. It looks like a New England home for sure.
Very New England-y. I kind of like the fact that it's an historical structure wrapped around like a bunch of modern architecture. But to kind of get us to snuff when it comes to like the Revolutionary War, this is the place where a clandestine group of people, a secret society known as the Sons of Liberty, would meet. And they would discuss the ideas of, things like, well, they planned stuff like the Boston Tea Party. They had their own little Boston Tea Party in New York, so to say. And so back when they were still sort of a ragtag game, the Sons of Liberty were hashing out ideas in places like Fraunces Tavern. And even the New York Chamber of Commerce had its birth in this building. And so this was a building that gave birth to a lot of other ideas, not just within New York itself, but within the country as a whole. And so, like I said, you have the Sons of Liberty meeting there. You even had people like Alexander Hamilton meeting there because he was affiliated with New York at the time as well. And so you give the beginnings of the revolution in a place like this. Hamilton even had left his mark on the tavern too, quite literally, because a cannonball hurled through the roof of the building. It was because Hamilton had commandeered cannons to fire on a British ship, and the British ship retaliated by firing 32 broadside cannons into the city, and that sent a cannonball through the roof into the tavern itself.
It's okay. Anyway, you know what's making me think of, Max? It's like, okay, how many things in our history, like the Boston Tea Party, might not have happened if these guys weren't loosened up with a few drinks or something, or like, hey guys, hold my beer, or.
All right, well, let me throw a twist on why they always met at the tavern. Because most of the meetings and most of the public buildings were, of course, British, and you usually had your big meetings at the church.
Oh, that makes sense.
The problem with that is because of Henry VIII, England has its own church,
right.
The Church of England, and thus your colonial overseer was also the guy in charge of the church.
Right. Yeah.
So you couldn't really have
probably not a good place to meet for your revolution.
Exactly. If you're going to voice your complaints, hanging out at the church was a bad idea.
But the building itself is cool, and
it is. We're going to talk about that when we come back.
Absolutely.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan. News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Alan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And once again, we want to welcome our new sponsor, Groundworks. You can take care of all your foundation needs going to groundworks.com and booking your free appointment today. Before we get back into our conversation about great moments in building history and Fraunces Tavern in New York, let's talk about our good buddy Jay Hill with Big M Roofing and Remodeling. I find it very serendipitous that we've got Groundworks below and we've got Jay Hill above, basically, you could say. Big M Roofing and Remodeling is just like the name says. It's basically it's all about the exterior protection of your home and all interior remodeling except kitchens. Jay makes a big point of saying that.
No
Almost
kitchens,
you
no
could say
bathrooms,
an
right.
exclamation point, no kitchens. That's not his gig. He doesn't want to do that. But everything else is fair play. From roofing to gutters to siding to windows and interior remodeling and, even fences. Decks, things like that. But we always lean heavily, of course, into his roofing expertise because Jay is a GAF Master Elite installer. He's always 5 stars with the Better Business Bureaus, and he is among the top tier and top rated roofers in this entire region. And with good reason. Everything they do, well, for one thing, these are roofing systems that they're installing here. It's amazing how much roofing technology has changed over just even the last 20 years. And you may not notice it driving around. I mean, you're probably going to notice ridge caps and things like that, but they might look very similar. But man, the quality of the shingles, the ridge cap has been a big development. And this is the reason that they can offer lifetime transferable warranties with these roofing systems because they're so well made. And you talk about a selling feature for your home too. If you can tell the new owner that you have a lifetime transferable warranty, that's a huge deal. But all of these systems, including your gutters and your windows and siding, they all have to work together, and that's why you need expert installers. That's what Jay provides. The other thing that service that Jay is noted for and what has been very helpful for Allan and I and many others in the Mid-South is his expertise as a former insurance agent, because that is a very tricky situation. If you're in a situation where your home maybe has been damaged and there's a question of is this covered by my homeowner's insurance or not? Well, Jay should be the first person you call because he's going to come out, give you a free consultation, and if there is a path forward, he can help you navigate that process because this is in his field of expertise. And man, does that save you a lot of money, and it gives you peace of mind, and it's an exciting prospect. We also just love the energy and enthusiasm that Jay brings to every project. We love the business culture he's created over there. He's just a great contractor to work with. So we wholeheartedly encourage you to call Jay. He wants you to call him directly. You can reach him at 901-484-5645 or go to bigmroofingandremodeling.com. All right, Max, we were talking over the break. It seems like you might have to reset the table a little bit with Fraunces Tavern because I think we glossed over a couple of important points.
Well, like the name.
Yeah. What is this name? Because it's spelled weird, too. Not weird, but spelled different.
Fraunces.
Yeah.
Where it gets his name was Delancey had the property, built a house in 1719, but the property was sold by his heirs in 1762 to a man by the name of Samuel Fraunces, who was a restaurateur at the time. It was originally, he called the tavern the Queen's Head, and then over time it became known as like Bolton's Tavern or the Coffee House, and then eventually Fraunces Tavern. And so that's where we get the name. I just wanted to wrap up a few little points about the history and the birth of the nation of America inside of the tavern itself before we get to the architecture of it.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask about that.
One of the most interesting things to me was not only was it the birth of the nation in terms of all the meetings and such that took place in it, like the birth of ideas, but it was also crucial during the American Revolutionary War because it was a perfect place for espionage. Because imagine like the waitresses and the bartenders that host these British people who, let's just say, are getting a little bit more loose in the lips because they're comfortable. In fact, there was one of the most important things in our American Revolutionary War history occurred at this time in 1780 when a farmer by the name of Jane Tours was visiting from New Jersey to sell her goods to Samuel Fraunces. And Fraunces said that there were British officers in there that were toasting a man by the name of Benedict Arnold, who was getting ready to turn over the fort of West Point to the British. And so, they were all a little bit excited about that, like, hey, look at this thing we're going to do. So Tours goes back to her property in New Jersey, informs her brother, who's an officer with George Washington, who in turn goes to Washington to inform him about what Arnold is about to do. And so they nip that whole conspiracy in the bud. A co-conspirator is hanged as a result, and Arnold defects to the British. And so that was a pretty important point there.
I wonder if that's where the term loose lips sink ships comes from, because you were talking about a port, a ship, and these guys being drunk
A fort,
and toasting.
sorry. I mean, fort, not a port.
All right.
And then another kind of final point in terms of Revolutionary War history is, after all the war was done, after the Benedict Arnolds were all taken care of, their ducks are in a row, and we're getting ready to create a nation, George Washington famously bade farewell to his officers of the Continental Army there with his words, "With a heart full of love and gratitude, I now take leave of you. I will devoutly wish that your latter days may be as prosperous and happy as your former ones have been glorious and honorable."
Right. Yeah, a lot of history. And there's still a museum upstairs of this place. So I had a couple questions on for you guys. Well, not questions, but maybe more points. But for one thing, because my brother lives in New England. I visited him out there. I haven't visited him in a while. But one thing that you notice, like a lot of these homes that were built back in the 1700s, or these structures, they're still kicking today. People still live in them. What is it about that? That is a pretty hardy design structure like this. And actually, this building doesn't look 300 years old to me. It looks fairly relevant and contemporary, and it's functional. This place is an operational restaurant. It's a museum, and it's safe to go in. People eat, so there's something to be said about the architecture.
I think the architecture isn't necessarily that it's old or new. It's just, as you might say, timeless.
Yeah, it's a cool building. So,
one thing is, it's a simple building.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. We have form over function, function over form. When you look at the exterior of the building, it is kind of blocky.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a lot of, there's not a lot of fancy ramparts. There's not huge cathedral ceilings or any. It is a very utilitarian building.
But it's not cold either. The brick makes it nice, and there's a few angles here and there.
It's got the panache of the time. We weren't in Greek revivalism or anything like that. We were a colony, and things were efficient.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have to be boring or terrible. They didn't have to be brutal, but they were efficient because we're trying to get this built. We're trying to make it stable. And the other thing that kicks in a lot of these older buildings is the materials. Because these were true old growth hardwoods.
Yeah.
And we were not, we weren't building to be delicate. We were building for hard winters.
That's what I was about to say.
Because talk about expansion and contraction. Look at the temperature differences.
Well, exactly. I mean, and you're looking at, all right, the people here came over from a country that has a lot of winter.
Yeah.
So, that wasn't a big shock. It wasn't like we were moving from Bavaria down to South America. We were moving pretty much just straight across. So we knew winter was coming. We knew we had to do this or that. Because it was a larger estate, I hate to be indelicate, but waste management was a part of the design.
Yeah.
How do you get deliveries in? How do you get deliveries out? These were all well thought out utilitarian buildings, which is why so many of them are still with us today.
Yep.
And when you start talking about wooden floors, they weren't doing 1/4-inch planks. They were doing, 2-inch slabs because trees were not exactly in shortage in 1719.
Well, think of the tools they had at their disposal too. They couldn't just run this through and they didn't have plywood. They didn't have whatever. So they had to, have pretty hardy slabs of flooring.
And the other thing is they really, and I get to pick on Jay Hill just a moment, they really designed water management off the roofs very well.
Yeah.
Again, coming from England, a lot of these, settlers over here were used to thatched roofs, water management, storms. So none of these things were a shock. So as they built them, and if you go online and start looking at the pictures of the Fraunces Tavern, the one thing that's going to leap to you is there's a lot of wood, and this place looks really overbuilt.
But you know what? It looks inviting.
It is.
The layout of the
It's
rooms,
warm.
it looks cozy. It looks like a place you'd want to hang out.
It's a place where everyone knows your name.
There you go. I did have a question, too. Not a question, but it seems to me when you look at this structure, because it's on a street corner, which I'm assuming it's always been on a street corner. And
by design,
it can't be that far from the water, right? If it's getting hit by cannonballs. So we're talking a very strategic location for some revolutionary. So we'll wrap up our thoughts about that, and then we've got some more. Well, anyway, we'll tell you when we come back. You're listening to Tool Talk Radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
You may feel a slight sawing.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Alan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, we've been talking today in our Great Moments in Building History about a very famous structure right in New York. It's called Fraunces Tavern. It was built actually in 1671, renovated and turned into a bar in 1719, and this thing is still operational. It's still a really nice functioning building. It's a museum, it's a restaurant, it's a pretty cool structure.
We actually have a text on the line from Patrick who kind of says that the reason that this has probably stood the test of time is because they use traditional joinery rather than mechanical fasteners, which we use today.
Now that's a good point. When you connected some beams, you were probably using like a mortise and tenon, and maybe the things were joined together. Well, I don't know if they had dovetail with trim work, but yeah, that's a pretty good point, Patrick. I mean, yeah, you're not worried about rusted nails or screws failing or something like that. So,
and I just wanted to say too that the major reason I chose this structure as opposed to something that's more of a give me like Mount Vernon, because today we celebrate Washington's birthday, it's not only because it has a connection to him in terms of the birth of the nation that he contributed inside this tavern, but is the fact that all good ideas, all great buildings, all great nations are built inside of a place of comfort like this. Take Plashnik, for example, that Slovenian architect that we discussed. His ideas came from a place of comfort in his room. Antoni Gaudi, the Sagrada Familia, was given birth inside of an architectural studio. We have the Burj Khalifa, which towers super high. So all these great structures, all these great ideas were born in a place of comfort and relaxation, when your mind is like loose and free to kind of think and discuss.
Yeah, it reminds me, like I said, it reminds me of business being done on the golf course or being done at the bar, and it makes sense to a degree. I mean, you have formal institutions and you have regulations and you have all these things, and sometimes you just have to roll up your sleeves, go throw back a few, and let's talk turkey here. We can't, and strip away some of the pretense and
let
let's
me
get the
throw in
job
for the
done.
tavern of the time. The tavern of the time was not a bar.
Okay.
The tavern of the time was almost a community center.
Well, that's true. Yeah, you're gathering, getting out of the cold.
One of George Washington's favorite drinks was something called Applejack, which was of basically fermented apples that had been frozen so that you could separate off the fermented part from the wastewater. So, I mean,
Wow.
So
Okay.
You're not exactly thinking like in the terms of a modern bar like we would think of one today. These were definitely where you stopped in to get lunch. This was where, I hate to say it, the kids came in with you. Of the alcoholic beverages were not anywhere near what we think of today.
Well, that's a good point. Some of it was just because you didn't have clean water.
Exactly. And, when you start talking about even like a modern version like kombucha, which is merely a fermented tea, has a very, very low alcohol content, but it kept it from having cholera.
Yeah. There you go.
So when we look at these places, they were really where people did come to meet, eat, greet, and do business.
And it's a good place to hide and
spy
and do this under the cover of just being there for lunch. And then I could picture all sorts of scenarios, like some spy comes in with a secret document and orders a sandwich and then hides the document under the table. And the next person comes in and grabs the document.
Absolutely.
And apparently, it's like I said, it's very strategically located on a corner, and I guess it's not that far from the water. So back in its day, when you didn't have skyscrapers blocking your view, you probably had a lot of room to, you could see what was going on in the street outside and kind of,
No, buildings weren't more than 2 or 3 stories at this point in time.
I know you don't have the stomach for it, but I do like that one final scene in The Gangs in New York where it's like you're looking at the graveyard from like back in the day, and then you're seeing like the time lapse of the city growing, but that graveyard is still there. I love the idea of thinking of Fraunces Tavern in a similar time lapse where it's like it's old and it stays the same while everything else is new and grows around it.
That would be kind of cool. What if you had a camera and every day you could just do a time lapse of this bar, which is staying the same while the skyscrapers grow around it. But if you go to New York, definitely go to Fraunces Tavern. I heard the food's really good too. But check out the museum, and it's a great place to visit. So that was a good one, Max. Very, very, very well done. So before we get out of here, though, let's shift gears.
Oh, my.
This armor's useless. Why do we even wear it?
Oh, you stink!
This is the worst.
We haven't had a chance to use that little stinger. So today we're talking in our historically terrible segment. This is your baby, Alan. The poisonous color green, which I found an intriguing little tease. But the thing is, this is we have playground equipment with this. We use this today, don't we? Still, I mean, I think I was using some of this poisonous color a couple weeks ago.
Well,
what are we talking about?
Welcome to Sheely's Green.
Okay.
Okay, so here we go. It's the science of color.
Yeah.
And this was, we got to go back to, 19th century. So we're, 1840. And we are getting a handle on gases and chemicals.
Yeah.
We never had a handle on these before.
They just sort of happen.
So
if you're in a coal mine, these gases just sort of...
science is kind of getting there. Back in 1773, a guy by the name of Carl Wilhelm Scheele started making, artificial colorants. And they were derived from different substances. And he came up with this amazing green that didn't fade. The problem is kind of really unknown to him, was it contained arsenic. And, so here we are dyeing materials and of dresses, these fabulous greens, these beautiful greens, and you're basically wearing arsenic.
Yeah, I mean, if you're sweating, doesn't that start getting into your pores and things like that?
I'm looking up a structure right now that actually, it says that there's like a green color to it as a result of copper in the paint. Does that make it equally poisonous, or is that something different?
Well, that makes it antibacterial. But
I mean, the Statue of Liberty turned green. So,
exactly.
This is a dining room in Mount Vernon, which is Washington's home. So happy birthday again to George Washington.
There you go. But so wait, is green? Green isn't always. I mean, we eat broccoli. We eat things that are green.
That is very true. But
it's not the color green necessarily.
Well, this was copper arsenite is what he was actually making, and so through the process of making this, he was getting this beautiful color. But at the time, they didn't really understand that it wasn't just a color. That the color was also, it's kind of like nature. When it's really brightly colored, you probably don't want to eat it.
Yeah, I just remember these. I think they were even called poison berries. Growing up as a kid, they said, "Don't get near that tree.
Don't eat that.
Don't eat that."
Is it boysenberry or poisonberry?
I don't know, but I just remember it looked like a little cherry or something. Growing, my neighbor had a tree like that.
That was out of a holly tree, and birds would eat it, but it'd be really bad for you.
Right.
So what we've run into over time, and especially for people like you and me and Joe, we occasionally run into stuff like this where we're renovating an old place. And if you're working on historical buildings, it behooves you to go walk through and test things.
And wear a hazmat suit.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of things that were great ideas turned out to be not such a great idea.
I feel like we're going to carry this over to next week because this is a pretty good tease. But we set the table. Green is not always your friend in the home improvement
There were a lot
world.
of things that weren't your friend.
All right, we better get out of here, you guys. It's been another interesting episode of Tool Talk Radio. So on behalf of my buddy, Alan Gilbreth, and our pal Max over there behind the glass, I'm Joe Thorderson. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.